say, how dare you take him out that way? You should get permission from Congress. These are split-second decisions. You have to make a decision.
That split-second decision now has some cybersecurity experts worried about retaliation in the form of attacks on things like banks, universities, power grids, or even dams. We talked to Dave Schroeder, a professor at the UW who specializes in cybersecurity. He tells us why most businesses and organizations are now on continual watch for these kinds of threats. Iran is no stranger to cyber attacks, especially what's happened this month. How concerned should people be?
Well, that's a really good question. Iran has been developing a robust cyber attack capability. It's been about over the last decade that they've done this, and there are some examples of them attacking U.S. targets. So if we look back over the last few years, back in 2010 and 2011, they attacked a number of large U.S. banks, 46 banks. Hundreds of thousands of people are locked out of their accounts. There's an example of them attacking a dam, the critical infrastructure controls for a dam in New York State. They attacked the Sands Casino when the owner of the casino, Sheldon Adelson, made a comment that they took as a slight. And they attacked the city of Atlanta and took down all of their computer systems with the SamSam ransomware. And all of these attacks came from Iran-backed hackers and were directed by the Iranian government. And they took, in some cases, weeks to months and millions of dollars to recover from. So that's an example of what Iran has done in the past.
But should people be worried, concerned at home right now?
Well, with the recent conflict and controversy that's going on between the United States and Iran, Iran may be looking for a way to send a message beyond what it has done with the missile strike against the U.S. bases in Iraq. And the most likely place that's going to happen is in the cyber realm. Right now, everyone's trying to understand what really constitutes an act of war in the cyber realm. And it really isn't going to be things like website defacement, which we've already seen from Iran. It's not going to be things like propaganda or misinformation on social media. It's going to be an attack whose goal is to cause property destruction or loss of life. Now, they don't have a capability to do that on a wide scale, but that may be the type of attack that they're after.
That was my next question, kind of what these will look like. But what kind of consequences? Is it going to impact people, their money, infrastructures?
Well, Iran's history here is targeting businesses, government websites, oil and gas firms, and there is evidence that over the last year, and this is more preparatory in nature, but over the last year they have been conducting probing and what are called password spraying attacks against energy infrastructure in the United States. There's thousands of examples of this. There's a report just this last week that came out from a firm called Dragos Security that has provided evidence of this. And that could be, essentially them setting the stage for a possible future attack.
Are they a bigger threat than Russia?
They're a different threat than Russia.
How so?
And the way that they're different is they've been, they have been willing to use propaganda on social media and some bot and troll networks, not to the same extent that Russia has. Iran will more light up these networks when they need to, and then they'll disappear. And sometimes they'll get removed, by Facebook and Twitter as well. And they've been watching countries like Russia and China and getting help in some cases to develop their own cyber warfare capability.
Do we have to worry about other enemies of the state taking advantage of this current situation?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. In the immediate aftermath of both the Soleimani strike and Iran's retaliation, Twitter and social media, Facebook, Instagram, were flooded with misinformation and disinformation about these attacks. Pro-Iranian propaganda, anti-US propaganda. But the interesting thing is some of that is from, not from Iran. It's from Russia, it's from criminal elements, it's from other countries who see this as an opportunity to enter the fray and stir up chaos. So
they're already doing it.
They're already doing it.
What can people at home do to maybe better protect themselves during this situation?
So any attack that that Iran may conduct isn't going to be targeted at individuals. It's going to be targeted at businesses, it's going to be targeted at governments, municipalities, utilities, things like that. So what can you do to prepare? It's the same advice that you've probably heard a number of times. Make sure that all of your software is up to date, don't ignore security updates, make sure you have good backups, and largely just be aware that in the social media space, you're going to see disinformation and propaganda, especially in the immediate wake of any kind of attack or major event. So wait for that situation to calm down until reputable media and verifiable sources can get in there.
Speaking of cybersecurity attacks, now that we're in 2020, many people at home remember what happened in 2016 with misinformation online. Are we still going to be at that same threat that we were in 2016, or are things getting better?
Things are getting better because the social media companies have an increasing handle on what those types of attacks and techniques that foreign actors use look like. So they're really getting a handle on things like advertising and gaming their algorithms to make content go viral, but it's a really hard problem to get in front of because Google, Facebook, Twitter, they just don't have the manpower for this. And adversaries, especially state actors, are always going to be looking to get out in front. And so I think in 2020, what we're going to see is an evolution of this problem, where it's not just going to be Russia playing there. It's going to be actors like Iran, like China, and other elements who are seeking to influence the way that people think, the way that people behave. That's the goal of this kind of activity.
Is there any way to halt it all?
When we have an open society like we do, and when we have these US-based platforms that are fundamentally open in nature, there's no way that you can stop this 100%, because these platforms are designed to share information. Their fundamental reason for being is to get information out there, whether it's to share with friends or family, for advertisers to reach people, for corporations to interact with one another and customers. And so when you have foreign state actors in the mix, they're going to have access to those same tools and resources.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us
My
on the
pleasure.
program.